Good morning, everyone. It is Friday morning, and what that means is that I bring to you one of the providers from the Udefine Wellness Network and feature their modality. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. One of the providers in our network has suggested to me a topic that she lives every single day. And I felt that it was really important for us to be able to share this topic today. So we're gonna go with it. And I'm going to invite you to talk or to put your comments in the field. Sorry, I'm multitasking here, and it's I feel like I'm just running all over the place, but let me stop again and just whoo, and everybody can sit in the waiting room. So this topic is about special needs kids and families and how to work with it. And I think it's a really important topic today. And so it is my pleasure to introduce to you Udefine Wellness Network provider, Janet Callahan. Janet, thank you very much for doing this today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And I'm going to turn it over to you while I'm letting people into the room.
Okay. So my name is Janet Callahan, and I am a Reiki master and flower essence practitioner. And I'm also an engineer by degree and by day job, which, is good this time. This past year has been really good for us because it means I'm home every day working here in the basement, my lovely basement. But still getting paid, which is huge for us because my husband's been laid off. Our background is a little complicated. We have two children. We have Alex and Bethany. They are 12 and 9. And between them, they each have about 2 or 3 pages worth of diagnoses. So I'm going to start by saying that while I'm not an expert in everything special needs, we have a lot of experience in this house. We have medical issues, we have physical disabilities, we have developmental disabilities. So we kind of hit the whole spectrum. So I also want to say at the beginning of this that I'm not in love with the term special needs. Most of what my children need is the same things the rest of us need. But it sometimes takes a little extra care and a little extra effort to help them do what they need to do. They are disabled in the governmental sense of the word, and probably in the more general sense of the word as well. It is unlikely that Alex will live independently, as they say. Although I keep pointing out that none of us live independently. We all go to the grocery store and buy groceries from someone and take the car someplace and have friends. And so it's an interesting world to be in, to be sort of living that experience and those changes in terminology pretty much on the fly, right? As people make changes, and as we talk about what's really going on and what is happening to people and what people need, we're changing the way we approach how we talk about it. So I'm going to apologize up front because I'm sure that I'm going to miss something somewhere. Because there's just a lot of words and a lot of terminology, and different people are going to have different opinions about what the right way to talk about some of these things are. So we have, between the two kids, over 700 nights in the hospital in the last 12 years. We have gotten to the point where they are disabled enough that we have Medicaid as a backup, and we're in the process of hiring caregivers for them who will come to the house and help them with all the things that they struggle with on their own in addition to us, because frankly, it's exhausting. And this year in particular has been bad because normally they have school, they have other activities to go to, and most of those are just not available. We have actually had to pull them out of school completely. We're homeschooling this year because online schooling was just too hard. Too hard to manage both of them at the same time. They both have one-on-one support when they're in school, and for one of us adults in this household to take on both of them at the same time and keep them on target and on track and engaged in the lesson was just not working. So for better or worse, I'm not sure if we're going back next year or ever. That's, still sort of up in the air right now. It certainly has afforded us some different viewpoints on what we thought we needed and what we thought was the right thing to do. We are very privileged to have that opportunity and to be still living a very comfortable life having done that and made that choice. And that's a hard, it's a hard thing to talk about, but it is true. Most people cannot do what we did this year. So I want to talk a little bit about families that are in situations like ours, sometimes not as intense, sometimes more intense. It's a little hard to envision more intense, I think, for some people, but you have to understand that when we had toddlers, our toddlers had feeding tubes and they had tracheostomy tubes and they had ventilators and they had oxygen at home. And we were used to managing respiratory emergencies every day. This was not a 911 call when a child turns blue. This is, well, you do what you do and you take care of the problem. And there are plenty of families who live that level of intensity in what they're managing every day. We have been fairly lucky in that although my kids are intense and their behavior is sometimes less than we would hope for, most of the really hard and violent is not a word I really want to say, but some of the more violent things that children with disabilities sometimes do when they are frustrated are mostly under control at our house. We still have kids who leave the house. And at 9 and 12, you'd think, oh yeah, your kids leave the house. You send your kids outside to play all the time. My kids don't stay in the yard when they go outside to play. They're in the street, they're down the street, they're across the way in the parking lot, looking through the fence at the neighbor's empty pool. So everybody here is always on high alert all the time. And that part also is exhausting. And for many families, that is every day. So I guess the first thing that you should know as a practitioner is that families who have family members with additional challenges and needs are often very stressed and very tired, and often are being told, oh, you just need to take some time for yourself, which is great in theory, but finding a babysitter for kids like mine is very challenging. So that time to go and take that break is very limited. Even though we all hear it every day and we know that we need to take those breaks. So it's a balance for us, right? It's how do you take a break that relieves your stress without causing more stress? So even when people are talking about how stressed they are, you have to keep in the back of your mind that just saying, well, just go do this is not as easy as it sounds, right? Most families like ours have a stay-at-home parent. And that is frequently not by choice. It is because that's the only way to have somebody available to do all the things that need to be done. It's the only way to get a child to 10 to 15 to 20 hours of therapy a week. It's the only way to get to all the doctor's appointments when you have 10 doctors. It's the only way to not get fired for calling in sick every time your kid is sick. When Alex was in preschool, he missed 27 days of school the first year. Conveniently, our school district said they were not going to call the police on us for that. But we were getting the letters, mandatory letters every quarter, every month that we had missed too many days of school and were suspected of being truant, right? The only reason we managed it at all with 2 working adults is that when they were at their most fragile, we had in-home nursing who was here all day, every day. And that meant we could leave a sick kid at home with their nurse. We didn't have to stay up all night with a sick kid because we had a nurse who stayed up all night anyway. I have a very, mostly a very flexible employer, and I've mostly had very flexible supervisors. But until Alex was maybe 8 or 9, every vacation day and every sick day every year went to something they needed. We didn't go on a vacation. We didn't leave town. We didn't go anywhere. Including the year that I took a sabbatical. I took a 6-month sabbatical to stay home with no pay because Bethany was not ready to go to daycare and we couldn't send her to daycare with the things she needed. And then she ended up in the hospital anyway for 3 months of that 6 months. So most families are budgeting a lot. Most of us prioritize what our kids need and figure out how to make it work. But most of us are single income families. And we hear that a lot from doctors too. Just, one of my friends was told when her son was born with cerebral palsy that kids like him had mothers that didn't work, that she should just plan on not returning to work after her maternity leave was over. And that's hard. That's hard to hear and it's hard to live. It's hard to experience. In terms of working with families and children, it turns out that the Medicaid waiver we have pays for my kids to have massages. It pays for them to have chiropractic care. It pays for them to have a whole bunch of other therapies that aren't sort of covered by typical insurance, which is a little surprising to me. So that's been kind of nice to experience and kind of work through what can we get paid for and what can't we. But most of us are looking for things that help our families function better, whether that is helping a child have less pain or fewer behaviors, or whether that is helping parents cope, or any of those sort of that whole range of things. The more things we can do for ourselves to make us healthier and more resilient, the better off the whole family is. But that goes for our kids too. And I know, like at our house, that's where most of my practice has been over the years, has been, what am I doing with my kids? What am I doing here to help us? Mm-hmm. Right? Because that's an everyday experience. If you are seeing clients who are disabled, I would recommend that you consider that you don't always know what that person is really understanding, even if you don't think they understand. Alex is great at this. Alex is nonverbal, And he says, I don't know, a few dozen words maybe that some people can understand, not everybody. And he has a computer that he uses to talk with. He's not a conversationalist, and his grasp of grammar is lacking. When we pulled him out of school last fall, they told us he read at a second grade level, and he would be in sixth grade this year. But when we sat down and started working with him, we know he reads at least a fifth grade level. So he literally had them completely fooled and convinced that he was incapable of reading at anything above a second grade level. Because as far as he was concerned, why should he do that work? People underestimate him all the time because they don't think that he's paying attention. Even when he's moving, even when he's not looking at you, even when he is watching a movie, he catches everything. And it is easy to see someone who is in a wheelchair or who isn't capable of verbalizing their thoughts, or who has other things that make you think they may not be, that they may have a cognitive impairment. You still don't know. You don't know what they understand, so you might as well assume that they understand everything. Presuming competence, as the communication device people say, is your least harmful choice. If you assume they understand everything and they don't get it, okay, somebody can come back and explain it again. If you assume they can't understand it and so you don't explain, then you've completely missed the mark. So talk to them just like you would talk to anybody else. If you don't do a lot of work with kids, try to get down on their level rather than just bending over them. Try to make sure you actually have their attention, but don't think that eye contact is the marker of attention that we were all told it was when we were in elementary school. For many people with autism, eye contact is a lot of work. And they actually pay attention better when they're not looking at you. So, you know, that's an experience you kind of have to feel your way through, but don't assume that the things you think of as paying attention are the things that are necessarily key to that person paying attention.
Time to jump in with questions?
Yeah.
Because I'm chomping at the bit over here, and I think some other people are too. First of all, wow. Thanks for sharing your story. I mean, I knew a little bit of it, and I, definitely follow you on Facebook. So I'm, that's how we kind of keep in touch, right?
Right.
And so I know some of the things that and struggles that you've gone through, but you have made some incredibly important points today, especially in how to communicate with a special needs family. You made a really important point of that the caregivers and the special needs family, man, you're under stress.
Yep.
And I get it. I do not want to minimize what you said by comparing my own story, but we've been caregivers for somebody who had Alzheimer's for about 7 years. Mm-hmm. And it took 3 of us adults just to handle the one patient. So I certainly understand. And I had a child who, as very young, was borderline special needs. We tried to keep him out of the system, so we never got a diagnosis. And we were able to find the right people to help him, and he's now an adult. But so I get it. The message of how it can get out there is something that I want to help focus on with you, and we will get this through this video out there. But before we jump in with the questions, I wanted to say thank you for sharing this today. So let's open it up for questions. Anybody who has any specific to how you'd work with your clients or just in general to what's going on in Janet's life. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I work with some clients that have some different physical and mental disabilities. And one thing that I'm encountering, especially right now, is anxiety levels. And I'm trying to find a way to balance alleviating those anxiety levels with keeping my boundaries as a provider. And let me give you the biggest instance that I'm encountering, and maybe you can give me some insight in the best way that, or some of the things that I can do to help in this area. I have a couple clients that especially have this high anxiety that as things arise prior to their visit, they're coming in with additional texts and emails outside of the scope of our work together. And my initial response is, we'll address this during our time together at this date and time. But then we start to creep into the, can we meet 15 minutes earlier? Can we meet a half an hour earlier? Are you available now? And I continually come back to, our time together is this date and time. I have it set for just for you. We're going to address all these things together. And, you know, it's honoring my time and my boundaries, but I wonder if there's a better way that, you know, and occasionally if it's something quick I can address, I will. But is there a way I can maybe bring down some of that anxiety that they're experiencing? And I need to get some of these things taken care of.
That's a good question. I mean, I think everybody is so anxious right now.
Mhm.
I see it in every conversation I have with everybody. And it doesn't matter whether it's in a group of parents or at my day job or at, like, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Everybody is super anxious. We deal with a lot of anxiety here. This is my 9-year-old is, we think she has PTSD, and she definitely has severe anxiety. And it's sort of been a roller coaster in terms of getting it under control, because it is not easy, right? I know, listening to what you just said, my take on it as somebody with anxiety would be the boundary should give that sense of security. This is the time we are going to talk about it. This is when we will deal with this situation. This time is just for you. I'm not going to answer anybody else's calls during that time. And I'm not going to answer your call right now because I'm with somebody else. Right? It's hard though.
Like,
Holding boundaries,
compassion.
right. Holding boundaries is hard. And as a provider, it's important, because otherwise people will take advantage.
Mhm.
And then you will be exhausted, more exhausted. Anxiety is one we struggle with a lot here, and I don't have a lot of good answers, but I do think that having that discussion, like, we have one doctor that actually said that. He said, I promise you that you will always be late when you come to this appointment. We will always be late. And I kind of rolled my eyes, because I hate doctors that are always running late. We see too many of them to put up with that for very often. But this is the guy that we've seen for 12 years now. You know why? Because his statement was, you will always be late unless you are the first appointment of the day. Because if something comes up that needs to be done today, we will find a way to get your kid in today. right? And that's the boundary he set initially. His boundary was, don't you dare complain if we are running late, because one day it will be you.
Wow.
And I think I would set it back the other way, right? This is the time that I have set for you, and I'm not going to interrupt other people's time to take care of your issues right at that moment. This is the boundary.
Thanks.
Yep.
Wow. I rarely am I speechless. There's really so many golden nuggets in this one. Heather, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Well, I wanted to make a statement as a long-term homeschooler, I've been for about 14 years. I loved your perception around all of that with your children, bringing them home and seeing, because as a homeschooler, a lot of homeschoolers do it because of special needs on the spectrum. So I've spent, most of the last 20 years around children like this and seeing that light in their eyes. So I thought it was beautiful to kind of hear your perception, especially as mom. And because I know as an outsider, it's probably more rare as an outsider to really witness those little special things that you see every day that is there. So I think it's beautiful that you shared that out loud. As a provider on yourself, like with my clients with the special needs, I've noticed as I work through their kids, and I know you said it's hard for the parents to find the time to take care of themselves. As a provider, I realized that they were having a hard time seeing that their kids were getting better until we kind of stopped with the kids and worked with just the parent. Have you seen this in your own practice or even in your own life?
I think I see it a lot. It's easy for people to get stuck on what they think they know, right? And it's a perception shift. I will say that's sort of been a shift for us this year. I mean, we try really hard not to let, like I said, Alex is great at fooling people. And if he'd put that much effort into actually doing his work, he would be, absolutely brilliant. But one of the things we've talked about this year is look at how much improvement we've seen in these other things, not in academic things, because we haven't really stressed about it. But in terms of like, he gets his own lunch. He can, do X, Y, and Z that he couldn't do last year. We had the benefit of a very understanding elementary school that is within walking distance of our house. When we bought this house, they were the worst school in our school district, and we were a little on the fence about that, right? It's a great school district, an expensive neighborhood, worst school in the district. What does that tell you, right? But this is right where we were supposed to be. This school, 60% of the kids don't speak English at home. So when Alex showed up with 5 words total, nobody batted an eye. They have, no one group has the majority. So it's not majority white or majority of any race or any ethnicity or anything else. So there's a lot of talk about everybody's okay the way they are. Alex has friends who look out for him when they're at the park and who looked out for him at school, like when they had substitutes and stuff. And I don't think we would have had that had we not been someplace like this. But middle school is a different ballgame. And understanding that was a big jump for us, and understanding, what things is he really capable of doing, because everybody has known him since he was little, and everybody still has that idea in their mind that he is you know, this little fragile thing, and instead he's as tall as me, and he's, you know, completely capable, I think, of a lot more than they expect. In Michigan, you can't, it's unlikely that he would graduate with a diploma. But in Michigan, special ed services go to age 26, and they include job skills and so on and so forth. So, you know, we're talking about what does it take to really graduate? How would we make that work? If he really can work on grade level, which we've seen this year, how would that work if we sent him back to school? And the answer is probably it won't. Like, I don't see how they can do that. So there's a lot of talk about what is possible. What can Alex do, and what can he learn out of what he doesn't already know? Like, how do you teach a nonverbal kid a foreign language? I don't know, but we're going to try and find out. Right?
Wow. If anyone can do it, you can.
See?
Oh my goodness. Any other questions before we wrap this up, ladies? Because there's so much here, Janet. I think I could talk to you for a very, very long time, but we don't want to dilute the importance of what you have said so far. But Heather or Stephanie, Lori, anybody have another question you want to ask? Okay. So I'm going to say this. If Janet is living COVID right now, I mean, we all are, but this lady is working from her basement in her home, and also homeschooling her kids and everything else. And if I'm going to urge everyone to help support Janet by going to her Facebook page. I put it in the comment section here. I will also put it in when we post this to YouTube, we'll have it there. There's a link to her store. She has some really unique items in her store, great gift items. Janet, you're still doing it, correct?
Yep.
I should have asked you beforehand. Fantastic. So you've got crystals, we've got gift items. There's fantastic stuff in there. Or reach out to her directly, because we really do need to be supporting these families. I know what the stress level is like, and it has to have just been magnified with COVID. So, you know, we want to help support each other. We say we're in this together. Let's be in this together, and let's show some support. And I have not made that claim or appeal on any other one of these videos that I have done. So this is a special request I'm asking of anybody who's watching this, is go over and visit her store and reach out to Janet and see what you can do to help and support. In the meantime, Janet, I just have to say thank you. Really coming on here and sharing their story and elevating our awareness so that we can be better practitioners when we're working with those families and have a new degree of understanding. We had somebody who made a comment that what you talked about, where you said, hey, we're always going to be running late unless you're the first appointment of the day, and you're going to have to deal with it because one day it's going to be you. That really helped someone, and and whether it was a special needs client or not. Get over it. This is the way it's going to be. So I love that. With that being said, everyone, thank you for watching this. We're back here every single Friday morning where we bring to you another modality or subject with the intent of elevating health and wellness professionals to understanding each other better. I'm Denise O'Malley, founder of You Define Wellness, and I appreciate you all being here with us today.